For the rest of your life, you'll ask and answer questions. You'll provide your friends, families, colleagues, boss, and even strangers with information and explanations to help them deepen their understanding of a particular topic. Maybe you're sitting in class and a professor uses a word you've never heard before, and so you ask a question to deepen your understanding. Or a family member asks you how to bake that delicious pumpkin cheesecake pie you always bring to Thanksgiving parties. And so you walk them through the recipe. How we answer questions, propose ideas, and share new information can be a challenge. Using the right words, examples, descriptions, and visual aids will help make the difference in whether your audience understands your message. Now, let's examine the differences between explaining concepts and sharing information to an audience.
When you are trying to help your audience learn something new, it is important to consider how you change the audience's understanding to leave a lasting impression. When we explain an idea, we deepen the audience's understanding of a topic, whereas when we inform, we are only making the audience aware of our topic. Simply put, informing is sharing information that could easily be Googled. For example, telling the audience how many people voted in your local election, sharing the unemployment rate, or the date of the next semester of enrollment are all examples of things about which you might inform your audience. This type of information is important, supporting evidence that you will want to incorporate frequently in your communication. Sharing these ideas of specific details and corresponding source citations for information can give your audience context, help them understand the significance of the issue that you are discussing, and enhance your credibility as a speaker by showing that you have done your research and are informed on your topic. Now, when you are giving an explanatory presentation, whether it is giving a formal speech, sharing an innovative idea during a meeting, or just teaching your mom something you learned at school, you must do more than just tell your audience about information. You must provide detail and a more complete explanation to deepen their understanding of a topic. When we explain something, we focus on the how and the why of a topic. For example, you might explain how social distancing could help slow the spread of COVID-19 in order to help hospitals maintain enough capacity to take care of their patients who are affected most severely by the virus. You might also explain how globalization resulted in production processes that might have been efficient when the economy was strong, but that resulted in a broken supply chain and shortages of vital resources during the pandemic. These explanations go much deeper and require you to help your audience understand new concepts that might have previously been unfamiliar with, or help them to see connections between ideas that they might not have previously understood. Now, when will you give explanations? You will provide explanations for the rest of your life. Explanations will be used to help whomever you're speaking to understand your ideas. There will be times when you'll explain a complex idea or scientific information to an audience who does not have expertise in that particular area. At other times, you'll be helping your audience understand something completely new. For example, if you want to become a doctor, you'll have to explain to your patient what illness they're suffering from and how to treat their illness. And according to Rowan, there are 3 primary reasons that ideas can be difficult to be understood. And these 3 reasons are, number 1, the language or concepts are difficult. 2, the structure or process is hard to envision. Or 3, the idea is difficult to believe. Now, each of these reasons requires a significantly different approach to help your audience gain a deeper understanding of your topic. New concepts are difficult to understand. They involve words that your audience are unfamiliar with. Now, language can be unfamiliar to these audiences for several reasons. For example, the language could be jargon that is used in a specific field, and the words might be long and difficult to say or remember, or because an idea or concept doesn't translate from another language, so your audience may not have a context for understanding a specific idea. Aside from the idea you are trying to share, the language itself can get in the way of your audience understanding your message. When difficult language makes an idea hard for your audience to understand, there are 4 steps that can be used to facilitate understanding. These 4 steps are: number 1, provide a common example of the concept. Number 2, provide a definition that explains the essential characteristics of the concept. Number 3, share several examples of the concept to help distinguish between what the concept is and what it is not. And number 4, give your audience an opportunity to practice identifying examples and non-examples of the concept. For example, people around the world have referred to COVID-19 as a pandemic. A pandemic is a disease that spreads rapidly from one person to another that is prevalent over a large geographical region or through the entire world. Now let's take a look at difficult to imagine. Sometimes ideas or processes are difficult for your audience to understand because they are difficult to picture. Perhaps the process or the object that you are describing is too small to easily be seen, such as cellular mitosis, in which one cell divides into 2 different cells. At other times, the process is happening in a place that cannot easily be seen, such as internal mechanisms within a car engine, or the way that all physical parts of the heart work together. At other times, ideas or processes are difficult to picture because they are abstract ideas that do not have a concrete presence that can be visually observed, such as the idea of luck. When an idea is hard to understand because it is difficult to picture, there are 2 strategies that should be used to help your audience grasp that particular concept. These 2 strategies are the use of visual graphs and verbal organizational cues. A visual graph, such as a diagram, model, or a drawing, or even a cartoon, can help illustrate the concept or process that you're trying to explain. Verbal organizational cues help your audience to understand the relationships among the parts or processes as you give an explanation. Simultaneously, verbal organizational cues point to the specific elements that you are describing in the graphic using your hand, a laser pointer, or even another device that can direct attention to a specific part of your presentation aid. You might also want to consider including textual organizational cues, such as titles, labels, arrows, and other indicators to help draw attention to a specific element and illustrate relationships between parts. For example, if you are explaining the hearing process to your audience, you might show a diagram of the parts of the exterior and inner ear that includes labels for each part. And also point to each part as you explain the process of how the ear and brain convert sounds into meaning. You might also utilize an illustration or animation to help explain the concept or process. When explaining abstract concepts, it is helpful to think about metaphors or analogies that will help your audience to visualize these abstract concepts. For example, we often use a metaphor about cows circling to protect the young and ill from coyote attacks to help explain the concept of herd immunity when talking about how vaccines protect human populations. We often use metaphors about war and battles when explaining how certain cancer treatment targets cancer cells while trying to allow healthy cells to survive. During the early stages of the COVID-19 crisis, doctors found it helpful and useful to use a diagram with 2 curves to help explain how physical distancing could help to flatten the curve and slow the spread of the virus when you cannot see an actual diagram of the thing that you're describing. Showing a diagram that illustrates the concept through metaphors that can be illustrated is a communication tool to enhance understanding. Now let's take a look at difficult to believe. Even when a concept utilizes accessible language and can be imagined easily, sometimes a concept can be difficult to understand because it is difficult to believe. We often have inaccurate ideas about how something works, and it can be difficult to change our mental models for how we believe something happens. When we are trying to help our audience understand something that is difficult to believe, Rowan suggests the following 4 steps. Number 1, acknowledge your audience's everyday understanding of how the phenomenon works. You might even want to consider asking your audience to describe the concept in their own words to better understand their perspective. Number 2, acknowledge why that explanation seems plausible on the surface. And number 3, explain why that impression is incorrect or incomplete, and show examples that demonstrate why it is not adequate for explaining the concept. Number 4, explain the concept or theory more completely and illustrate why it is effective.